Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I'm going to discuss my thoughts on some of the, should we call them highlights, from Donald Trump's inauguration and first few hours of regaining his executive powers, the wake-up calls, the petty-mindedness, and the change of attitude towards his failed insurrectionists. But first, for daily political commentary, please hit the subscribe button so you stay notified. So, we're going to carry on living in interesting times then. Now, I'm not going to do this in any particular order. It's certainly not going to be in chronological order. But one of the more remarkable features I thought of Trump's first day back in the hot seat, which I've not really seen remarked on at all, is the pardoning of the January 6th insurrectionists. Now, you may think it's not really all that remarkable. He's just letting off his criminal allies, and it's not like he's the first US president to do so. Although pardoning 1,500 people who literally tried to overthrow American democracy might be a first if you want to be detailed, but let's not split hairs. But remember that he was still president for 2 weeks after the 2021 insurrection attempt. At the time, those involved pleaded with him to pardon them, but he didn't, did he? As we've seen from Biden yesterday, it is possible for a president to preemptively pardon as long as the potential criminal act has been carried out, even if no prosecution has yet taken place. So why didn't he pardon them in 2021? And why has he now pardoned them? Well, my speculation would be that he saw them as having failed to keep him in power back then, a sign of his petty vindictiveness that he wanted those who failed him to be punished. But now that he's back in power and seemingly with a plan to remain in power, whether officially or otherwise, he may be feeling a bit more magnanimous. Or at least to his own side, obviously not his opponents. He's still all fire and retribution on that front. And there were other examples of petty vindictiveness on display as well. Renaming a mountain in Alaska, which Obama had initially renamed in line with the broad wishes of the people of Alaska. Trump changed it back from an indigenous name to emphasize the white supremacy is back in America, I guess. And of course, if Obama could change the name, then Trump can change it back, sure. But if Alaskans liked the new name, then why? Why do it? It can't even be called a show of strength. It's just a petty act. Much like his renaming the Gulf of Mexico as Gulf of America, given that this is unlikely to be reflected in international maps and discussions and changes nothing in terms of territorial rights, another display of small-minded pettiness, I suppose. Mind you, in the grand scheme of things, not the things to get worked up about, he's made up a different name for a big bit of rock and some water, neither of which he is likely to visit. Of rather more consequence was pulling back rights for trans and non-binary people, withdrawing from the Paris Climate Agreement, a few other things. These were inevitable, of course. He made a big show of ending diversity requirements in government. He did not, however, make a very good show of kissing his wife. It was a tin-inch apart air kiss. So presumably Melania's made it clear that Trump is not to touch her on the face or he's getting kicked in the balls again. Count Binface was straight in calling that the real Gulf of America. Or maybe Trump just has a really infectious disease right now, which is passed on by contact. Because he also didn't place his hand anywhere near the Bible while he was taking his oath either. Trump also claimed that he'd stopped all funding to UNRWA. I wonder if he's aware that the US stopped funding them some time ago and never reinstated it. Or does he know perfectly well and it's just another example of how he's stringing his supporters along? And speaking of the Middle East, he was taking full credit for the ceasefire agreement, but showed no confidence that that peace would last, which is a little bit confusing, isn't it? If he's this great peacemaker, if he's this guy who could bring peace without executive power, just shouting from the sidelines, then shouldn't he be able to more easily maintain that peace with power? Oh, to be one of Trump's brainworms. They must be so athletic. But what yesterday did show is that Trump means business. He made it clear. He was very explicit over the last year or so. Should be a wake-up call to anyone still sort of sleeping. He thinks he was too cautious during his first term. He listened to too many people telling him things can't be done. He has promised to proceed without that same caution this time. So if anyone is still thinking that Trump will just settle down now that he's back in power, give him a little milky drink, he'll be fine. He didn't during his first term, and I believe him when he says he wants to go further and faster this time. The main hopes will be, I suppose, that his government lacks the competence to carry out the plans and that he gets bogged down in arguments and forgets about some of his plans altogether. Little bit like during the election campaign, you know, when he was constantly going off piece, constantly going off message, telling his crowds about the argument he was having with his own strategists. Now he will feel vindicated, of course, because he won. But the same indiscipline mixed with incompetence could blunt some of the worst impacts of his presidency. That has to be the hope. The same thing happened in the UK, really, under Boris Johnson. He had way worse plans written down in the manifesto, including destroying our independent judiciary, as well as scaling back human rights legislation. Fortunately, he gave the job to Dominic Raab, who ended up being too busy throwing tomatoes at people to actually get it done. The same could easily happen with Trump's picks, few of whom seem to have a track record of administrative delivery. And we have to remember, Boris Johnson had a hefty majority, and he still couldn't get a load of stuff done. There was no barrier to getting laws passed if his witless ministers were able to draft them. Same is not true of Trump. He has technical control of Congress, but we've already seen that it's not that secure. And on a more British note, you would have to have a heart of stone not to feel sorry for poor old Priti Patel, Liz Truss and Nigel Farage, a few other sycophants. There they were, off to the inauguration. Oh, a golden ticket, they're going to be there. It was going to be marvellous. Then Trump decided it was a little bit cold and he'd rather hold it inside. So they didn't actually attend the inauguration. In reality, it didn't seem to be worse weather to me than existed for previous inaugurations. Remember how Bernie Sanders just came dressed for the weather at Biden's 4 years ago? I think Trump just didn't want to risk tiny crowds again, you know, as happened in 2017, and so decided that the best way to claim his inauguration was packed out was to hold it in a scout hut. But of course, this left Nigel Farage and other associated foreign toadies out quite literally in the cold. I actually thought it was a bit mean of his GB News colleagues to ask about it when he was being interviewed by them, because he had to awkwardly say, oh, no, I was actually at the inauguration. No. But he said he had a great seat for it anyway. Absolute bollocks, you're outside, mate. My seat was better. I was sat in an armchair playing Path of Exile 2 on my laptop. That's the game which Elon Musk reckoned he was the top player in, until he was recently exposed as a fraud. I'm not a top player, just to be clear. Only up to about level 17 on my most advanced character. But that is still 16 levels more than Musk has. And speaking of Musk, he attracted some attention. Performed a fascist salute, which the Telegraph tried to excuse as a Roman salute. Clearly oblivious to the fact that, okay, it's based on a Roman salute. It's not actually a Roman salute. And the reason why fascists in Italy and Germany adopted a similar salute in the first half of the 20th century was because it was intended to signify an instruction to show absolute obedience to the emperor. But the Roman salute, as I recall, is not arms straight and palm down, like the modern fascist version. But I'm not a historian, so don't quote me. What I will say is that Musk was performing a fascist salute. And more specifically, he thought it was a Nazi salute. Because he thinks that's it now. He's unstoppable. In fact, I think we're going to see the training wheels coming off the new American overlords quite soon. They seem comfortable that they're now in position, that they know what they're doing, that they can now just proceed without having to pretend anymore. But anyway, it's irrelevant whether Musk was thinking of Caesar, Mussolini or Hitler when he did it twice. The meaning was still the same. America is now a dictatorship. In reality, I don't think America is quite a dictatorship yet, but I think that's how Trump and his oligarchs are behaving, as if the US is now a feudal society where the king just needs to keep his barons happy and he'll be able to do whatever he likes. And I suppose we'll find out over the next few weeks what it is they particularly like, because that's what they'll prioritise doing first, because they'll feel they're on a bit of a timer to get it all done before the midterms. We've still to hear anything about tariffs. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you've enjoyed the video, please click the like button and subscribe for further content. If you'd like to support the channel further, you can click the join button for memberships. Thanks for listening. And until next time, I'll see you later.